Hi everyone, I'm Tracy Smith from Numerical Insights, and in this video I'm going to cover 3 different ways to measure turnover and how to properly measure retention rate. Turnover is a term that every company of moderate size or larger measures. It's represented as a rate or percentage of workers that leave a company within a defined period of time. Turnover is an easy concept to grasp, but can be elusive to measure. 3 of the most important factors in measuring turnover can be gleaned from the definition. First, we need to determine what we are measuring as the baseline or denominator in the equation. Are we measuring just employees? Employees plus contractors? Do we include interns in our count? Are we measuring voluntary or involuntary turnover? And what is the time period for which we are looking to measure turnover? Understanding the business need for performing this calculation and anticipating what further workforce segmentations you may be asked for is fundamental in determining the pool of workers that represent the denominator. Once we've established the pool of workers, the turnover type, and the time period, we can address the different ways it can be represented. There isn't one method that is more correct than another statistically, so we need to ensure that we understand what we're measuring and that we continue to measure it consistently. This will ensure that trending is correctly represented. Given that many human capital management and HR analytics systems have turnover metrics built in, we may also choose to use the same definition as those systems to ensure the analytics we produce on turnover are consistent with what users of those systems are seeing. Method 1 is the method utilized by many HR systems and is the most straightforward. In this scenario, we only need 3 numbers. We will take the defined worker population at the start of the time period, the population at the end of the time period, and the count of the population that left during the time period. In this scenario, we divide the exiting population by the average population. This is a quick and easy way to calculate turnover, but it presents a few challenges. In many industries, there are seasonal changes or business restructurings that can materially change the total population at any given point in time. Given that we are only taking a population count at the start and end of our time frame, we may lose some insights into the turnover of the workforce. Conversely, knowing that there are seasonal changes could ensure that we always take the start and end date population values at the same point in the cycle each year. Where the first scenario skews the numbers, the second helps to guarantee a consistent view of the workforce. For example, if a landscaping company had 100 workers at the start of their season in April, but laid off 25% of its workforce for the winter months, we would see a much different turnover rate depending on the start and end dates we choose. If we measured when the company had hired in the seasonal staff and ended at the end of the season, we would see this in our turnover calculation. Understanding the turnover patterns in a seasonal situation gives the landscaping company insights for better decisions. The owner may choose to hire over his work capacity by a few percent, knowing that he will have future attrition. Or, the owner may choose to take bookings at 95% of his labor capacity, knowing the approximate number of employees that may leave. There's one more challenge with this method, which is quite significant. If you were to present the monthly turnover values and yearly turnover values, you would discover that adding 12 monthly values doesn't equal the same number as the annual calculated value using the formula. One client of mine, an HR analytics team, found they spent more time explaining why adding the monthly numbers did not equal the annual value than they actually spent discussing turnover. This was especially true when presenting to finance leaders who were used to summing up monthly values on financial statements. After 3 years of this challenge, the team changed their turnover formula to match the third method that I will present in a moment. To help mitigate seasonal or unexpected changes in the workforce, many companies choose to use the average of a predetermined population during the period being measured. In Method 1, if you were measuring turnover between January and June, you would take the population on January 1 plus the population on July 1 and divide that by 2 in order to get the average population. However, if you had a surge of temporary help on May 1 for the summer, basing the average population on only the number of workers on January 1 and July 1 wouldn't be representative of the population throughout this 6-month period. For this reason, in Method 2, we add the worker populations on the first of the month for each month covered. In this scenario, the average population value better represents the worker population over the time frame of January to June. Our landscaping company knows that some people quickly find that the hard work required on the job isn't for them, so the company loses more people at the beginning of the season, i.e. in June. By the end of the season, November 1, workers rarely leave. Knowing this, the landscaping company chooses to use Method 2 to calculate its turnover rate. The company then lays off 25% of its workers on November 1. Method 2 is also far from perfect. If our business owner effectively replaces the exiting employees in the same month that they leave, then the denominator of our equation would remain at 100, thereby minimizing how much of the turnover is represented in the calculation. To keep things simple, if the company lost, say, 27 people, but was able to replace them before the close of each month, then the average population in the denominator would be 100. If the company had 3 people leave each month and did not replace them in the same month, then the average worker population in the denominator would be 97. Finally, like Method 1, this approach will not yield the same numeric value for an annual calculation as summing the 12 individual monthly calculations. You'll be back in a situation of explaining to finance and operations leaders why adding up the months does not equal the year. In the case where turnover is either very consistent or seasonably predictable, Method 3 helps build useful visualizations that represent how an enterprise is tracking against projections or goals for the year. This method matches the monthly and yearly turnover definitions defined by SHRM in the US and CIPD in the UK. It has the added benefit that the turnover values for the year or quarter will always match the sum of the monthly values. In Method 3, we define the sub-time periods, usually months, and use the formula in Method 1. Then, as we move through the primary time period, usually a year, we add the percentages together. This creates a visualization that is mathematically very similar to Method 2 at the conclusion of the year. The final topic I'll cover is how to correctly measure retention rate. The retention rate is not 100% minus the turnover rate. Many companies incorrectly represent retention by simply stating that if turnover is 20%, then retention must be 80%. No matter which turnover formula you choose, this statement is not correct. Retention rate is the measure of the population that exists as active at the start date and is still active at the end date. Retention is the number that, if explained well to business partners, can be insightful and complementary to turnover. Determining retention is easy from a formulaic perspective, but may not be as clear if there are movements in and out of departments or in and out of the workforce when there are large seasonal hires or student hires. Understanding your baseline worker population and your audience is key to providing meaningful insights. To determine retention, we need 2 pieces of data. We need to identify individual workers who are active at the start of the time period, and we need to know which of these workers are still active at the end of the time period. Retention actually helps eliminate the mathematical confusion that hiring or transfers brings into the equation by simply asking which employees are still here after X amount of time. It helps unmask issues that turnover doesn't expose. To perform this calculation, we take the employee IDs of all individuals at the start date and look up which IDs still exist at the end date. Then divide the end population by the start date population and multiply by 100. For example, suppose we select a time period of 1 year and we have 125 employees at the start of the year. At the end of the year, we find that we have 150 employees, but 35 of those were hired during the year. We can determine the number of employees that are still with the company by calculating the number retained is equal to the number of employees at the end of the year minus the number of new hires during the year. We can then calculate the retention rate as, in this example, 115 divided by 125 times 100, or 92%. For our landscape company, the owner may find it extremely valuable to know the number of employees that return from year to year. For example, knowing the percentage of staff that is retained from one season to the following year's season will provide insight into the hiring needs of the company for future seasons. Based on considerations such as business culture, HRIS system capabilities, available analytics tools, and seasonal hiring, one of the 3 turnover definitions shown in this video may be more appropriate for you than others. Using more than one definition for turnover is not advisable. Using a consistent and well-communicated method of turnover in conjunction with a retention measurement will provide analysts and business leaders with the insights they need. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to press like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive a message when new videos are released. You can also explore the other videos in this series or visit our website for more information on how to use data analysis to improve your business.